Hello, I'm the Gaming Spectre 71 and welcome to a Warframe video. In this video I wanted to I wanted to record a potential build that I found while I was playing, starring the Warframe that nobody really uses that much, or at least I have not noticed people using that much, which is Atlas. A possibly very decent Warframe. Now Atlas, as far as his build at the current time, Atlas is built for survivability, high amount of health, a high amount of armor, a little streamline, enough range, and enough energy to keep me with loads of energy. Rage is going to be a very important mod which I have added because it's important to have a high health and a high armor with Atlas, so Rage is actually very useful because I'm going to be using Rage in a specific way. I found this really nice little combo with using Atlas and Hirudo, our melee weapon for gaining health. Now I know you can gain health from Lifesteal, which is a mod, health return as well, so you don't really need to use Hirudo to get health, but it got me wondering, what if I were to use Hirudo and all of these mods to begin with? Now at the time of my current build, I had to polarize my Hirudo, so I was basically leveling it up, but the basic idea was to use as many health mods on my Hirudo as possible. Hirudo by default heals you for every time you deal a critical chance. But what if you were able to apply a healing return and a life strike, being able to heal every time you basically deal damage, and be able to heal on the fly just by using your channeling? The idea was to use basically life strike with healing return, then use a small chance boost in order to be able to just increase that amount of healing as well as heal as often as possible. Now I don't have healing return at the current time because I was still leveling it up. Essentially, I was still in the process of leveling it up at the point. But the whole idea was to use like all the healing mods on the Hirudo. Hirudo being able to heal by default, so if you're low on health, all you gotta do is switch to Hirudo and you pretty much you're settled. You can heal over and over. And the idea, this is where Rage comes in handy, because with Atlas having a high amount of armor and a decent amount of health, he essentially becomes what you might call a Valkyr, a more durable Valkyr, I guess. With the exception, of course, that I'm using a high health build, so I have more health. My armor is not as high as Valkyr's, but is decently high, possibly very nicely high. I think Atlas is actually the second highest armored Warframe in the game, so I guess it would be, it would be nice to have him with a high amount of armor. And with that's where Vigor also comes in handy, just to give me that extra vitality, that extra health along with vitality, to have as much health as possible. You'll actually see I have about 900 health, give or take. My health keeps increasing every time my Hirudo critically strikes, because it actually gives you a slight health boost every time it does that. So I have, give or take, about 915 to 920, maybe 925 about health. I had about 1,000 health over if Chroma was actually nearby me. Chroma is actually, I have a teammate here who's actually using Chroma, definitely the armor build Chroma, using his second and his third to keep himself alive while increasing his damage. And yeah, I actually found it interestingly surprising to actually using the combo of Hirudo and Atlas. Actually, I was an even better tank than he was, and it actually worked pretty well. And so essentially what I was doing was using my Hirudo. Obviously I was using it so I can level it up, but also using it by default is actually very handy. Every time my health was going low, my Hirudo was healing me thanks to all its mods installed. Normally I would be healing about 16 health per hit. If I had my healing return at the time of this video, I didn't have my healing return on because I was still leveling the Hirudo up. But I did have life strike on me, so every time I needed health, every time my health was going low, all I had to do is channel my weapon, and essentially I was gaining health. And of course, when you channel Hirudo, life strike makes you lose a lot of energy. Now I was using a mod to counteract somewhat counteract Life Strike's channeling, reducing its cost from 12 to 9 at least, which is better than having 12. And of course, naturally, that's still it still takes energy when you're using Life Strike. However, this is where Rage came very, very handy, because with Atlas having a high health and high armor pool, naturally taking as less damage as possible and being able to withstand as much damage as possible, he was able to also, by using Rage, I was able to heal. I was able to gain energy every time I took damage. Combine that with Hirudo giving me health every time it critically striked with it, which is its passive ability, and giving me health and also increasing my base health a little bit. And also Life Strike every time I channeled it to lose a little bit of energy, to gain a lot of health back, up to 20% life steal. That's basically 20% of all the damage I deal as health. And the fact that every time I took damage on my health, I would use a Rage would basically give me energy. So it was kind of like a circle, an endless circle of me taking damage, not taking as much damage, and being able to take a lot of damage because of my Atlas's high armor and health. Thanks to my Rage mode, I would be getting energy through taking damage, and then I would be using that energy with Hirudo to gain, with Hirudo's Life Strike to gain all my health back. On top of that, of course, using Hirudo's Critical Strike to give me even more health and a slight health boost. So it was kind of like a circle, and at some point when I had too much energy, I just started fisting everybody. I just started meleeing everybody. With Atlas's first ability. It was severely satisfying, and literally every time I needed health, I would switch to using my Hirudo to gain health with its lifesteal. Naturally, just by taking damage, my Hirudo would just keep me healthy over and over. And obviously, me taking damage, and because of the Rage mod, I would gain energy, so I had tons of energy pools. It was only when Eximus enemies, especially the Leech enemies, the energy leech enemies, were able to like stack all together in multiple numbers, is where I really started using a lot of energy. But yeah, that wasn't really much of a problem. I am using, a very important note, to max out even more energy. I was using Zenuric at the time. My Zenuric is not that highly upgraded. I think I only upgraded, once. So my Zenuric only gives me 2 energy per second for the rest of the mission. Everyone's activated. But that's still a very decent amount. That's enough. That's basically 2 people using Energy Siphon together, so that's more than enough. And on top of that, I have Rage. I had a Sentinel, which I kind of had an accident of doing. I meant to use, at this match, I meant to use a Kubro, because all my Kubros have, they have an armor and health upgrade mod, which obviously gives them health and armor. And obviously with my Atlas having a decent amount of health and a lot of armor means that my Kubros would also have a high amount of health and armor. And on top of that, they all have Pack Hunter or a Pack Leader, which essentially allows me to heal them every time I basically melee enemies. Every time I deal damage by meleeing, Pack Leader heals your Kubro. So essentially, it would be dealing damage all around the place. I would be dealing damage with my Hirudo. It would be healing itself as well. And yeah, I would also be healing myself at the same time. So I'm healing my Kubro and myself at the same time just by using my melee. My taking damage gives me energy. I would use that energy when I needed to basically spam the shit out of my out of Atlas's first power. I was also using Atlas's 4th power. A little bit of streamline allows me to use my energies. Thankfully, just by taking damage, I have loads of energies. Zenuric also keeps replenishing my damage, my energy, even when I'm using my abilities or when I'm not taking damage directly, which obviously that also increased my energy gaining. And I was essentially using my Rumblers for the sole purpose of either taking aggro, a little bit of aggro away from me, and also stacking up the damage, dealing additional damage. And yeah, this was actually a very effective build. I was able to run a nice little survival. Like I said, at the time of the current video, I was actually using the Hirudo only like it was, I don't know, like maybe 15 at the time that I started the video. Like maybe 15. Oh, actually it was 18, rank 18 or level 18 by the time I started the survival. Yeah, it leveled up pretty nicely, and I was really surprised to actually see that it actually is an effective build. So essentially, it kind of made Atlas survive a lot longer and also act very effectively as a tank. And due to the fact that he also has his what's it called, his rumblers with him, they also drawing aggro and also dealing damage. It's like you have 3 tanks essentially in the game, unless you were to use the Titanic Rumbler mod. But the way I have him built, if you wanted to sacrifice maybe Primed Vigor because maybe, I don't know, you don't want that much health, or I don't know, Armored Agility, if you didn't want to have that much armor, you could use Titanic Rumbler to have you know, 2 very strong tanks. Although Atlas would obviously have to like reduce something, which means that he would like not be as an effective tank. Although I don't know, I haven't experimented with that as much, but I found that the yeah, the results are actually very fun. It made me use Atlas a lot. Ever since I discovered this method, I had an idea for it. I mean, everybody knows about Hirudo and how it gains, how it gives you health, and how every time it critically strikes, and obviously people would use tons of mods to increase that critical chance as much as possible, in order for Hirudo to deal as many critical strikes as possible to allow to give you essentially as much health as possible. And I just decided, you know what, I had Life Strike, I had Healing Return, they are very good mods, they essentially make any weapon give you health, so I decided why not use it to the weapon, to the melee weapon that actually also gives health. And it actually was effective because I was gaining health all around. Essentially, I was able to gain health every time my Hirudo would critically strike, every time by simply by attacking. If like I said, I didn't have Healing Return at the current time of this video, but if I did, as long as I have a mod on it that actually deals elemental damage, every time I would strike, it would consider it as being an elemental strike, so I would essentially be healing through Healing Return, I believe so, unless they, I don't know, did they nerf that? I don't think they did. So essentially, just by, as long as you have an element on you, you basically heal, which is kind of nice. And yeah, if I had that, it would be also effective. I only had Life Strike at the current time, and that was still effective. I was gaining all the health from the critical chance of simply by critical striking with Hirudo, and at the same time, every time I would, if I was in a panic or a pinch, or my health would go very low, all I had to do is activate my channeling, and essentially consume some energy to heal myself back to full health. And thanks to Rage, and like I said once again, Atlas's high health and armor pool, I would simply be getting energy from Rage, and I could be using that energy to either fist enemies in the face, dealing tons of damage, or simply using Hirudo's Life Strike, Hirudo and the Life Strike to gain my health back, and vice versa. And really, when you are actually, as long as you use your when it comes to Atlas, if you're using the Rumblers, having them go around dealing damage, and also using your fist, not only is it satisfying, it is also really fun. It's also very effective. It's like having 3 tongues, tanks essentially. And yeah, it actually was a very effective strategy that I found to be very useful, and I decided to form it up. So yeah, that was actually a very nice little thing that I had, an idea that I had. I don't know if anybody else had this idea. I just found it by myself, and I discovered it by myself, and I decided to put it to the test to see how well it does. And for the most part, I'm very surprised to say that it actually worked. Now, in this current video, I'm actually joined, like I said, by a Chroma, who obviously was built up for as well, you know, essentially he was built up as a bullet sponge, he was built as a tank to take damage, and I'm surprised to notice that actually I did go down, I think, once, I think I went down twice. Once at some other time when I was trying to soon after I revived him, and once when the life support went to 0 and I tried to extract and I was just sitting there, and we got peppered. I got basically peppered by enemies because I wasn't dealing damage with my Hirudo. So I stopped dealing damage, and as soon as I did, my health just drained to nothing. Um, and he went down quite a few times, and that actually surprised me because I was pretty much, while he was trying to avoid damage at some point, I was still out there, I was still dealing damage, I was basically going out there and taking all the aggro and killing everything, with my rumblers also taking aggro and killing. And he just took the, essentially he started using most of his primaries. He started out using his melee weapon about as often as I was. But yeah, he ended up just using his primary to the point where he just ended up just staying out of it. And that actually surprised me. However, overall was actually a very decent survival. Nothing, you know, not the kind of like an hour plus survival. Mostly because even if you could do an hour plus survival, I would probably, if I were able to do an hour longer than an hour survival, I probably wouldn't, mostly because it'd be boring. Like an hour tops, it would be the top amount of time that I would, you know, do a survival, but, yeah, I got stuck there. But yeah, I mean, the base survival for most times, especially when you were on a public match, and this particular match was actually a public match, it was a random match. Like I said, I was only here to level up, because I found this, the build for Hirudo and Atlas combined. And I was actually trying to level up Hirudo after I polarized it, because I wanted to add healing return. I couldn't, and obviously you need to polarize to be able to add more mods, so I had to do that. And yeah, it actually worked pretty nicely. And this was a random group, like I said, it was a public group. And most of the public groups that you enter are pretty much average number 20 to 30 tops at time. You will actually you will most likely be there for like 30 to top 30 minutes. Unless you find a good group or a person who wants to keep going or wants to level up or wants to farm for something, in which case you might go over 20 to 30 minutes, you might go like, I don't know, maybe 40 minutes, maybe 50, depending on the build of other people. And yeah, it was a case where, you know, both of us wanted to do as much as possible, gain as much as possible. I mean, I wanted to basically take advantage of the of this opportunity to level up my Hirudo for as much as possible, and it kind of worked out. So yeah, this was a potential build. You can see at the end of the video that my Atlas did a very decent job, instantly basically taking the charge and also taking the show from a Chroma, which was a surprising thing considering Chroma is one of the best tanks when built properly. And yeah, this is the end of this video. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found it useful. I hope you decide to, you know, experiment yourself and find this your own builds. So I'd like to thank you very much for watching. Stay cool, and I'll see you later. Bye.